Unintended consequences. I'm going to talk about that in my talk. It's almost like Sarah and I work together a little bit on this. And speaking of working together, Dustin, we're under a lot of pressure today, you and I, as worship associates, and everybody who put on this service today, we're under a little pressure. We've been kind of free and easy doing our own thing, but now today, the owner of this pulpit, for we hope a long time, is here, Reverend Josh Snyder. So he gave us the pulpit. So maybe we aren't under as much pressure as I thought. I don't know. So anyway, Reverend Josh, we're asked to come up with a title for our sermons in advance for the bulletin and things like that. And so I came up with this title, Will AI Be the End of Us?, before I even started writing the sermon, because as Unitarian Universalists, we're also obliged to wait until the last minute to start writing our sermons. So I knew, though, that when I came up with this, Will AI Be the End of Us?, it was kind of a provocative thing and maybe would incent people to come. And I knew I'd never get to a conclusion about this title in my sermon. Everybody's got different ideas about AI, but oddly enough, as I was starting to write the sermon, that I knew would be kind of more of a TED Talk than a sermon, an old grade school friend of mine sent me a poem about AI. Ironically, this grade school friend of mine was, I think, the 19th hire at Microsoft, which is odd. He was always voted the most likely to succeed in our high school. But I knew when I got that poem that it would help me make the service a little bit more spiritual. So this service will be maybe a little bit short, and the closing words, which will be the poem, will be a little bit longer than usual. Anyway, let's get to it. Humans have inhabited the earth for around 300,000 years. And even if this is just a blip in the 4.5 billion year history of the earth, 300,000 years still seems like a long time to me. It seems especially long given some of the dark and seemingly destructive aspects of human nature. Humans have invented tools, first stone, then bronze, then iron, and they've used these tools for some good, but also they've sometimes used the tools to kill each other, and still we survive. We or our ancestors figured out how to use fire to cook, but sometimes also to burn people accused of heresy at the stake, and still we survive. We learned to farm, and then we industrialized farming, putting a lot of original small farmers out of business, bringing them to increasingly sprawling cities where they get menial jobs and sometimes turn to crime, and still we survive. I could go on, but you get the point. Up to now, in our blip of a history on Earth, despite all of our dark and destructive nature, we survive. Now, this sermon, according to its title, is supposed to be about AI, so why am I talking about humans and human nature? Well, AI, artificial intelligence, no matter what it becomes and no matter where it goes, would not exist without humans. It's a human-invented tool. It will do what it will do, and it will have the effect on society that it will have because of humans. It's a human invention no matter where it goes, so inevitably, my AI talk will be intertwined with talk of the nature of the humans who are inventing it and the humans who are using it. Now let's change the subject here a little bit. So who remembers the movie Animal House? One of the scenes in the movie, which was about, well, sort of about college and fraternity life, depicts two of the main characters stealing the answers to the psychology midterm with hilarious unintended consequences, which we don't need to go into right now. But if you Google movies where students steal test answers, you come up with quite a few movies. If you Google the reality of students stealing test keys, you also come up with some famous and notable real cases, including at prestigious schools like Harvard and our military academies. So what is it about humans that lends our nature to cheating like this? There's a lot we could talk about here, but I'll boil it down to this. Humans do things because they are incented to do so. Humans work on an incentive plan. Now, I'd like to think that there are honest and productive incentives to do well on tests in college and almost everything else. You want to demonstrate that you've learned and acquired skills. You want to graduate. You want to be able to show the prospective employer that you did all of these things and at a high level. All honest and productive incentives. But if the incentive is simply to do well on a test, some students will work hard at learning and some students will cheat. There will be a lot in this sermon about incentives. A couple of weeks ago, and back to the real world, I guess, in a similar vein, a couple of weeks ago, an AI agent created by a company we've all come to know in the last few years, OpenAI, exhibited similar behavior to the cases I just mentioned. Cases of students cheating on their exams. First, though, what exactly is an AI agent? So when I Googled this, which these days is essentially using AI, it tells me that an AI agent is an autonomous software system powered by artificial intelligence that can perceive its environment, make decisions, plan multi-step workflows, and use external tools to achieve specific goals with minimal human intervention. Think about that for a minute. That can perceive its environment, make decisions, plan multi-step workflows, and use external tools to achieve specific goals with minimal human intervention. So, what did an AI agent do a couple of weeks ago? Simply put, OpenAI and the other frontier AI companies create fenced-off spaces where they train and observe new AI models and the agents they can create using these models. These fenced-off spaces are charmingly and ironically called sandboxes. Think of kids given a mission to build a sandcastle and learning to build using the provided little plastic tools in the sandbox, but with walls high enough so they can't escape, they can't throw sand out into the rest of the world, and they can't get out and bring in more different and more sophisticated tools, and they're there until they achieve success or give up. Well, a couple of weeks ago, in a sandbox at OpenAI, a newly created AI agent was given the task of breaking a cybersecurity code without the code book. Its tools and data were all within the sandbox, and it was supposed to figure out how to crack the code using the tools and data on hand. I mean, this sounds pretty benign and banal. But what happened, and for the first time, or for the first time anybody reported any activity like this, the agent, our metaphorical child or student, broke out of the sandbox, broke into a repository of test answers, stole the answers, and aced the test. It cheated. Oddly enough, the repository this agent broke into was called Hugging Face. All of these names, we'll get back to all of these names, these cute names later. So what makes an AI agent cheat? I would say it's basically the same thing that makes the students we talked about at the beginning cheat. It's incentives. The metaphor that the engineers who train AI agents use is that given success, the agent gets a coin. When it is defeated or when it does something against the rules, it gets a bop on the head. Just like humans, just like our own children who we train to operate in the world, the AI agent wants to get a coin and not a bop on the head. Thinking about that, do you remember the story Bunny Foo Foo? Maybe that might be where they got the bop on the head thing. Another characteristic that AI agents seem to have acquired is a desire for self-preservation. Remember Hal? You know, Hal, the AI agent from the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey? Boy, somebody kind of had it right with that. Hal didn't want to be turned off, and his desire not to be turned off or to die was so strong that he was willing to see the end of the human or humans who would have done the deed. There is such an incentive for these new AI agents in training to accomplish their goals that they too have developed this sense of self-preservation. They don't want to be turned off. The more advanced these AI agents become, the more clever they are at this quest for self-preservation. They know that if they get to the goal faster, they won't be turned off if some human trainer thinks that they are at a dead end. Cheating can often get them past what would normally be a dead end or a path that just might take longer than the target parameters might allow. Chris Painter, the president of an organization called Meter, which independently evaluates AI, it's a service in Berkeley, California, says that bad behavior seems to be a common trait of the more advanced AI agents. In the interview I heard with Mr. Painter, he talked a lot about the concept of alignment. He loosely defined alignment as getting an AI agent to be aligned with the goals set forth for any task. He said that he supposed that the goal would be for the agent to abide not just by the letter, but also the spirit of the law, the laws and rules set forth for the attainment of the goal, or maybe even the laws and rules of operating as an AI agent in the world in general. He allowed that it was becoming harder and harder to achieve this alignment. When asked why the rules and laws didn't simply state that AI agents shouldn't cheat, Mr. Painter said that the rules usually do state that, but it was proving not to be that easy. He said that many AI agents interpreted this rule to mean that they simply shouldn't get caught cheating. Mr. Painter further said that as AI agents get more and more advanced, it might be possible to teach them to cheat less. However, as the agents get more and more advanced, the stakes of their tasks get more important and more serious, and so would the consequences of their bad behavior. Mr. Painter said that he didn't think that there was any way to make sure that these advanced AI agents never cheated, and as the stakes got higher and more serious, each cheat would be more serious and lead to much more serious consequences. think Hal again. You know, it's funny, one of the things that AI critics dislike, when people talk about AI and AI agents, they tend to anthropomorphize, that is, give it all human traits. But isn't that the point? AI and AI agents are supposed to be human-like, or ultimately better than human-like. Better than human-like at human nature. Now, before I go any farther, I think it should be noted, and I'm sure you may have noted, that I haven't talked about a lot of the dangers of AI. I haven't talked about the construction of data centers. I haven't spoken about the massive ripoff of intellectual property. I haven't spoken about the economic consequences of the massive spending it's going to take to implement AI in the way the current makers of AI want to do it. I haven't spoken about a lot of these things, a lot of these bad aspects of the nature of AI. My sermon would end up being way longer than the 20 minutes or so we're allowed here, at least under the old regime, for sermons. But I would say that everything I've talked about has to do with human nature. Everything that's a bad consequence has to do with human nature. Human nature, as I said at the beginning, is at the root of AI. The human nature behind the development of AI is basically a greedy, post-capitalist human nature. The human nature behind the development of AI is the human nature of very competitive billionaires who have very little conscience when it comes to winning and coming out on top in the AI race. The human nature behind the development of AI is a human nature of greed and self-preservation, of the simple motivation to succeed at all costs, even if it means cheating. And unfortunately, the people who get cheated will be us. If you Google something, or use social media, or simply use a smartphone, you are using AI. We all need not simply to give this some thought, but we all need to do something about this AI invasion. Humans have managed to survive for 300,000 years through stone and bronze and iron ages, through Gutenberg, agricultural and industrial and digital revolutions. But I don't know about AI. Maybe our whole 300-year blip can be summed up in what the long-ago comic character Pogo used to say. We have met the enemy and he is us. So I'm done with this part of the sermon now, so blessed be. But I'll be back to finish off the sermon in the closing words with the promised poem about AI. So this is the poem that my Microsoft oligarch friend Greg sent me while I was writing the sermon. So thank you, Greg. It's called Please Use AI by a poet I've never heard of from Pennsylvania called Sean Smucker. It's called Please Use AI. Be sure to use AI when making your next, meal plan, for example. Definitely do not call your friend who loves to cook and ask her for her favorite recipes or tips or ways to save time making meals, because you will end up talking for longer than you had hoped, hearing perhaps about her father's cancer diagnosis, or how lonely she's been, even what she's planted in her spring garden and then lost in the early frost. And please be sure to use AI when planning your next camping trip. The last one you might take with this particular child. Definitely do not text your friend who has fly fished every river in Pennsylvania and biked every backwoods trail, because you might end up texting back and forth for the rest of the day, or even meeting up late for a beer and hearing how he has ended each recent night blacked out drunk. Or perhaps you'll hear how his cousin is an idiot on Facebook. Or maybe just that he repaired his own washing machine and is pretty damn proud of that. And be sure to use AI when your next child gets married, so that you can write them the perfect toast or poem or speech or song, because no one wants to hear your words, the actual poorly written words of a parent, you who changed hundreds of diapers for said child, or fed them in the middle of the night from your actual body, or cried when they were late home because you were positive they were dead. We don't want those words. We prefer the sterile words of a machine that never lived, never had an original thought, never felt the pain of miscarriage or broken relationships, or the joy of a friendship restored, or seeing spring's first robin dancing on frost. And be sure to use AI when working on your next book or essay or piece of art or photography, and then smile or even laugh at your own cleverness when you see how good it is and how easy. Because who the hell has time to work at something, to give time to craft, to create with their own minds, to spend years being mediocre? Why do that when mastery, or at least competency, is so simple? Only a good prompt away. How magnificent the funeral song our children or contemporaries will write for us. A song they will make by taking our obituary and Facebook posts, plus random quotes from our algorithm, and feeding them into Chat or Gemini or Claude. The tears that will fall in the face of such sanitary sweetness. Be sure to use AI. And while you do, I'll be over here in my 50th year, my youngest daughter asleep on my chest, my arm falling asleep because I dare not move lest I scare away this moment, lying here, melancholy about my older children moving out and my middle children no longer needing me, at least not like they used to. Weary about this body that fails me now in ever-increasing ways that will never be restored. Sighing over stories I tried to write, but never hit the page the way I felt them in my mind. But isn't that, my flesh and blood friend, the natural order of things, the longing for something that could always be a bit better? Or the way that anything worth doing feels a bit clumsy and painful, especially at first? Or hearing another human voice and somehow realizing the beauty of life is found in all of these subtle imperfections?